wait. Something's come up. So there you go, Megan, nicely done. So should I just prompt you to change slides? Sure. So so go ahead and shift down to the next one if you don't mind. So today I was just gonna kind of talk to you guys about the kind of stuff that I'm talking to communities about. What are the tools in the toolbox? What's fair game? And then I'm gonna talk to you about how to fund this stuff because there is money. My agency says that a lot there's no money because there's not much money in certain places, but there are some grants. And I think that really small projects can make a really big difference in a smaller community. So I want to share some of that with you, and then kind of share the takeaways. So on to the next slide, and this just gives you a quick sense of where my sorry, I'm looking up there, but I'm down here. What my region is, and so you are in ODOT Region 2. If you didn't know that before, now you know it today. And that region has a whole bunch of counties in it, right? So you can see I cover about half of the coast, up and down the coast, and all the way over to Oak Ridge. That's what I think of as my southeast sort of corner. So a lot of communities in there. So down in that zone, I'm talking to places like Oak Ridge and whatnot. And yeah, and so onto this slide, I always like to talk about this. My background is in cultural anthropology and stuff, so I have a little bit of an unusual background, not planning actually, even though I'm sitting in the planning department. But my background, I think, is part of the reason why I like this work so much, because there's been a real cultural shift in our country about kind of thinking about transportation and what we're asking for and thinking about these days. And about 40 years ago, we were kind of talking about sharing the road, and people were taught to ride their bikes in the same way that you drive a car, and that's sort of the safest way to get around. And then you fast forward to now, and we realized that that type of thinking and those really basic types of stripes that we were putting out on the roads for just a standard bike lane was only going to work for about 9% of the population. A lot of people weren't going to be comfortable enough riding in a bike lane right next to a bunch of cars. And so now we've moved from this kind of like share the road idea to this complete streets idea, which is more about like what are our roads, but it's not just our roads, it's our public right of way, not car right of way. What does our public right of way need to look and feel like for people to feel comfortable getting around in all the ways that they'd like to? And we know that population growth is happening. We know that more cars are coming, and congestion is just going to happen more and more. And so we really like to, try to make ways safe for people to get around a different way if they don't want to be in their car. So that's what's being called a lot of things, but complete streets is one of the terms that we use today. And if you shift on down to the next slide or flip your page there, this is kind of what we've learned. We've done research, believe it or not, around the different types of cyclists, and there's this whole typology of people that might be willing to get out there, and the strong and fearless are in their spandex, and that's probably who you know and who you've seen, and they wear the neon and that kind of thing. And that demographic is actually pretty small. And it turns out that about 60% of the population, which is disproportionately women and kids and things like that, are like, I'd be interested in maybe biking or walking to work or whatever, but I'm pretty concerned about how it feels out there. So we are now designing for a different group of people. We are designing for the interested but concerned. Sometimes they're called the 60%. Sometimes we call it 8 to 80, all ages and abilities. We also have an aging population, and we know that like living in your place and being able to walk around and get to things you need to walk around is a huge part of aging with dignity and staying healthy and staying a part of your community. So that's another thing that I think about a lot. So the types of things that I am talking about. So these are the tools in the toolbox. So these are the types of things that you guys might be thinking about when your community is looking to get grants or funding, or you're making decisions about where to put your bit of street funding and that kind of thing. So safer crossings is a really big deal. Flashing lights, you've probably seen those where pedestrians can activate them and then they'll flash, and they're pretty eye-catching and they have a really good response rate for people driving. traffic signal, traffic timing. We did a safe routes to school plan here in Sheridan, and I talked about Bridge Street and where the highway come together. And when kids get out of school, I saw how many middle schoolers were crossing right there, and I was like, gee, maybe you guys want to ask ODOT, hint, hint, about what's called a leading pedestrian interval, so that the little flashing hand or the little walking person that tells you when it's your turn to cross turns on before the car gets the green light to go, so the pedestrians have an opportunity to start, get out in front of the turning vehicles, for example, so the people driving the cars are more likely to see them before they make a turn, right? So there's things like that. Sidewalk infill, filling in sidewalk gaps, that's a no-brainer. Putting up signs to help people get around, extending corners, bulb outs. You guys have some of those on the highway. Where am I oriented? Up there, right? Those are great for traffic calming, slowing people down. In fact, I think you can feel a real difference, by the way, between the two sides of Bridge Street on the highway. I just came in on the highway over here, and the whole town was like, oh my gosh, this is so wide. It makes it so easy. You want to go fast. I'm like, we need to strike bike lanes out here. Something to visually narrow it down. Roadway reconfigurations, which is kind of what I was just referring to. You have a nice wide space, or maybe you have more lanes than you need. We used to do that. We used to overbuild because all we thought about were cars, truthfully. And we can reconfigure those roads if we go out and do the pavement. You don't have to put the stripes back where they were, for example. So those are all tools in the toolbox to make the pedestrian experience more comfortable. There's more tools, but I can't go into all of them. The bicycle tools in the toolbox, I'll be quick here. But on the next slide, the bicycle tools in the toolbox are, things like the bike lanes, but again, basic bike lanes are not my favorite. But buffered bike lanes, you can see that bottom left picture, there's a space, there's still a little extra space between the cars and the people biking, and it's amazing what a couple feet of space can do to help you feel more comfortable. Then there's some green pavement marking options. There's the opportunity to put up vertical elements between the people riding and the people driving. And you have to work through all these things. You have to plan for them. You have to figure out where they'll fit, where they'll work. They're based on, our speeds and our volumes of vehicles and things like that, where we recommend different stuff. But we have that all laid out in some handy dandy charts that we use at our work, right? So anyway, so those are the tools in the toolbox for biking. Now, the tools in the toolbox for all the things. This is the scooters and the skateboards and the bikes, and I mean, gosh, I gotta tell you, I just got back from a bike tour in Cuba, and there were also people walking their horses, on the side of the road. So I'm just gonna throw that in there for fun. So these neighborhood greenways are kind of a newer idea. I don't know why we didn't come up with this 30 years ago. But really, all it is doing is saying, hey, we have some really local streets that aren't our streets that are carrying a lot of traffic. And those streets could be designed in a way with really low cost things, could be designed in a way to make it way more comfortable and inviting for people that are getting around not in a car. And cars can still be there, people in cars can still be there, but they're gonna just have to go more slowly. And they'll know, because of some of the cues and some of the infrastructure, that it's a place that's sort of maximizing the design for people in getting around in other ways. And so these are pretty cheap things. There's like a speed hump, a speed table. Mexico just uses these everywhere. They're called topes, and they're everywhere. And they're just like this cheap, slows cars down. It's just great. And it can also be a raised crosswalk, and that makes your pedestrian even more visible. It's great for your visually impaired. They can feel the sides if you do a flat one, by the way, not a hump like that. There's some other pictures there, just anyway, of other examples of kind of maximizing the space, making the turns tight for vehicles, bulb outs on those corners, things like that. So if you scroll down, another fun thing about neighborhood greenways is they can do really cheap and temporary installations. That bottom left corner is in Mount Angel. Heidi, that just got added as part of a Safe Routes to School quick build project or a demonstration project. So these kind of low cost things with paint and some sticks that you can sort of go out and install to maybe just try something out for a while. It was a really big open corner. It was right next to a school. That big open turning radius invited people to drive through it really quickly, and kids were standing there trying to cross there. And so they basically did a curb extension or a bulb out, which is paint, right? Slow down those vehicles. Obviously, there's some artistic options up there. P.S. I can do none of this in ODOT right of way, but I share it with all of you because you can do it on your local roads much more easily than I can, right? Like that would just wear off because of all the trucks and stuff like that. You have to get a special permit. And then the upper right corner is, just an example of a really cheap, low-cost thing, where it's just kind of like, hey, folks, we're going to try prioritizing the street. I see this in Seattle a lot, in Portland a lot. We're just going to kind of prioritize this bit. This street's for everybody. Just go slowly and be aware. And it turns out that when people go slowly, they don't hit each other. So it's as basic as that. ODOT has a lot of great guidance in place for this kind of stuff. So, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because it can get really nerdy. I can get really into the kind of geekdom of bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. If you have questions about it, we can get geeky. But I just want you to know there's a lot of resources, right? People are doing this stuff all around the country. It's kind of happening everywhere. And lots of small towns, medium towns, big towns, so it really isn't just Portland, so just so you know. And it can be made to I think it can be made to kind of fit the look and feel of your community. So, but real quick to tell you why we have all this stuff, and you can go ahead and scroll down. Oregon does have a long history of thinking about people getting around in different ways. And we had the first piece of national legislation. This is just fun history, you may or may not be interested, but this is just fun history. The Bike Bill of 1971, that was a really unique piece of legislation that Oregon had. And what it said basically was when we rebuild our roads, we need to make sure that we're accommodating all modes of transportation. That was pretty innovative at the time. Now, fast forward all these years, we've learned a whole lot more, and this only results in really basic things like a sidewalk and a bike lane that we now only accommodates, this kind of fearless, confident group of people that's a smaller population. But it was the beginning, and we've come a long way since then. So there's some history here. So if we continue onward, you know what? I'm going to have you skip this. There's a statewide bicycle and pedestrian plan, so you guys know that. And then what I wanted to basically say was there's this kind of hierarchy of plans in our agency. It's really hard to keep up with it all. You do not need to. What you just know is that there's a really big Oregon transportation plan that includes considerations for all the modes of travel, including trucking, right, and biking, right? And then underneath that, there's a plan for each mode of travel. And so that's where the bicycle pedestrian plan is, and then under that is where, your transportation system plan fits, or your safe routes to school plan, right? And they all kind of feed up into each other. But that top plan really sets the precedent for all of our planning work. And that top plan has been updated over the years. It really is focused these days on all the modes and on equity and on safety. So there's been some real changes. You can go ahead and skip the next slide. You can just kind of keep scrolling. That's just basically telling you why we do planning, which I think you guys probably have a good sense of. It's to translate your community desires into an official document that then is the place where the city goes when they want to apply for funding or prioritize efforts, right? So safe routes to school plan. So I'm going to get to that because that's a really timely one. And that was why I first presented to your city council, was because they'd just done a safe routes to school plan. It was their first time kind of doing that. There was this we had an amazing engagement here. It was really impressive. And so we ended up with this enormous list of projects, and it's kind of like, now what, right? And that's a little overwhelming. And so I think one of the reasons why I first went to Planning Commission was kind of being we're good, we're fine, this is great, we've got a lot of ideas, but now we need to talk about prioritization, right? And so you guys already have done this, which is really great. Heidi got this for you guys. So it was funding from the state to do a planning exercise and prioritizing just safe routes to school plans. The reason why this matters so much is because the Safe Routes to School grant program at ODOT is the most secure funding source that we have right now for any improvement related to active transportation. So this is key. And so the beauty of it is it's legislated, it's in place, it's 30-ish million every 2 years. This is going to stick around. We have a lot of other things that come and go, but this one has staying power. The other beauty of it is, in being in a smaller community, is that eligible projects are within 2 miles of a school, and so it's pretty much your whole town, right? So it's game on. That means you guys can get things done under this umbrella, right? So, the city is going to be looking at, and I'll have to ask Heidi what she's got on it, but we've been talking a little bit about what grants to go for. The first round, there's a pre-application phase that's due at the end of this month, actually the 25th of this month. It's open now. I was supposed to come to you guys a month ago, and it was literally the day it opened, and I felt really good. I was like, oh man, I'm going to be so excited. I get to say it's today, and then I was sick. And now I'm here a month later. So it didn't open today. It opened like a month ago. But you guys have a whole lot of great project ideas already. And so I'm going to go onward and talk about some of the other funding sources at ODOT. I'm trying to be efficient here. So some of the other programs, so Safe Routes to School, number one. There's another one called Oregon Community Paths, which is also relatively new, which is really exciting because Oregon ODOT has never had a funding source for paths outside of the roadway right-of-way. We've never had a dedicated funding stream outside of the roadway right-of-way. And when you go to other states, if you think about this stuff, you can tell. When you go to Colorado, you see paths between communities. When you go to Nevada, you see paths between communities. It's really interesting. And if you wanted to nerd out on the politics and stuff behind that, I can tell you. But in a nutshell, we had to protect our transportation money. And so at some point in time, it was decided that this terminology of like, it must be in the roadway right of way will be inserted. And now we don't have any paths. So anyway, Oregon Community Paths just got started a few years ago. We're coming up on our third grant round. So this is exciting. I'm really excited about a very big vision that Sheridan and Willamina and Grand Ron have for an ultimate regional connection. It is in your planning stuff, and I'm really into it. And what I'm really hoping and encouraging communities like yours to think about is to think about getting phases of that regional connection refined and ready for funding and then built. And what I really like about that is you could start building it, because these things usually don't come for miles in one fell swoop because it's millions and millions of dollars. But I think you could start building a mile of it or a section of it that would just be enjoyable and the community would use it. It would have separate utility, right, as a transportation alternative, as a comfortable place where there's not also cars, right? And so if we could find where that path should go and you started to build it, I think it would get used. And then eventually you build on and eventually you build on. So that's just a plug that I'm making for you guys to think about. There's a new program called the Carbon Reduction Program. There's a lot of money coming down the pipe for this, whole climate change thing. And one of the remedies or one of the solutions or the ways to try and address this is to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions that our cars produce. The transportation sector is the #1 producer of greenhouse gas emissions. And so transportation is a really big deal. And so the Carbon Reduction Program is an interesting program. Heidi's quite savvy at looking at these and being familiar. But one thing that I've been seeing some communities do with this is get equipment, electrification equipment. So a sweeper, electric street sweeper. Albany and Corvallis both got one in the last funding source. So it's kind of a neat, unique little plug there. ARTS is called the All Roads Transportation Safety Program. It's all data driven and it's based on a lot of crash stuff. So you guys don't rise up there as much. You're not as competitive. You don't have so many crashes. This is a good thing, right? I have a little bit of funding for small, like lower cost bicycle and pedestrian things. Again, it has to be used on the state system. So someone at one point got in touch with me, for example, from Sheridan to ask about those SHAROs, those share the road arrows to get put on the state highway. If the community was interested in that, that's something we could talk about further. The city would probably have to maintain them, unfortunately. And then there's some other new things that are coming. The one thing I guess I want to point to is the Innovative Mobility Program. Heidi, just to make a plug, that's like, you can get these really, for ODOT, easy $10,000 grants for things like helmets and locks and programs and things for kids. To promote, getting around actively. So there's a lot of different things going on. They all have their own timelines. They all have their own nuances. I'm going to go ahead and skip that one. For Safe Routes to School, we're back to that just because this is the biggest near-term opportunity. The cash match has been reduced recently if you're a lower income school. Heidi, you're gonna have to look again at the map that ODOT provides because the data has changed recently from the Oregon Department of Education around that. And again, those are due, the pre-applications are due March 25th. And then I think communities will get a sense of where they score. It's pretty data driven, like you get a certain number of points for this and a certain number of points for that. And so I think that once you see where you land, you can decide whether or not the community is worth your time to take it to the full application phase. The next couple slides are about more specifics about the other programs, so I'm gonna skip that for now since you guys had a full agenda and just leave that with you. You can always follow up with Heidi, who can always follow up with me. I am always available and Heidi's good at reaching out. So the last thing, I guess, the last slide, these kind of takeaways is just to say, you know, there is funding available for active transportation improvements. You really have to do the planning work first, which is hard because sometimes we, myself included, are not very patient. You know, that's why I'm probably not an actual traditional planner. I admire the ones who are, because I think that they're more patient than I am. But you got to do the planning work first and vet the ideas, get the community support, that kind of thing, and then you apply for the grants or prioritize the funding to get it built. And then there's just all kinds of design guidance. There's all kinds of examples from all around the country and the state. If you're ever like, you know, I kind of have this idea, I wonder if this would work or that thing, and you know, you can always ping me and kind of be like, is there anything like this out there that we should be looking at, sort of thing. So lots of ideas. And then just my contact information is there. So yeah, that was about as fast as I think I've ever done it.
Great job, Jenna.
Yeah, I love this stuff. I talk so much, but I wanted to be respectful.
Does anybody have any questions for Jenna?
That's great, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
very
Very interesting.
Get the
Yeah.
wheels turning.
And fast.
Yeah, it could, yeah, that's good. I know if you're an English language learner, it might be hard. Yeah, good. I want wheels turning, and then, you know, Heidi will probably be coming to you guys with some thoughts on the actual, you know, grant applications. I don't really understand fully how like a planning commission interacts with city council, just be honest about that. So I don't know if you guys like weigh in on the priorities or the grants that the city goes for.
Not so much.
Okay. So it's just helpful for you to know the context of that and just like what's available and what's out there.
We're a small community and we all communicate really well. So
Yeah, I mean, that's the best is what, that
That's
makes
why I'm
sense.
here, that's why it was.
Yeah, cool. I like it. All right, well,
Chair, can I just say thank you, Jenna and
Yes.
Heidi. Thank you always do such a great job. You always are looking out for our community, which I have. I just thank you so much for that. We are applying for Safe Routes to School. We're actually gonna do, you're talking with the Safe Routes people, we're gonna do both a planning one, an engineering one and a construction application. And so it's getting really exciting about possibilities. We're working closely with the school district to make sure that
good.
what everybody. Thank you.
Okay, let me know if you get and have any questions with the application, okay? Yeah, okay, awesome. Thanks, good to see you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, next on the agenda, approval of minutes from our last meeting for January 8th.
Make a motion that we,
No discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we have a public hearing.
Could I do the introductions?
Oh, yes, you could, please,
Okay,
yes.
great. Although I did just send him out to talk with Jenna. Let me retrieve him from
Grab him.
Conroy. Retrieve him from Conroy.
While she's out, can I make a comment?
Sure.
It's about what she just had to say. You know, I used to work for the state, and I used to write grants as well. If you guys, whether it's on a planning commission Commission or the city council knows anybody who's been writing grants, who happens to live in Sheridan, you really need people who have some understanding of that process. You really can't do it just simply flying on your seat of pants. You can't, I can tell you from experience, okay?
Okay, Laura?
Well, I couldn't ask for actually a better segue. Good evening, everyone. It's lovely to be here in person again, and I have news. As you know, I've been your city planner for the last 9 months, and it's been wonderful. And your city has some additional work in economic development that it wants to do, and I have some skills in that. And so we have brought on Liam Bean to be your city planner. And so I will stay involved with Sheridan, but with a different hat. And so I wanted to bring him here tonight. He started last Monday. He visited Sheridan for the first time on Thursday. And Liam, would you introduce yourself a little bit? Say a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I hope everybody can hear me well. I'll just turn this thing on. As already said, my name is Liam Bean. I really, really hate it when people say Mr. Bean. I'm originally from the Central Valley of California, but I did most of my schoolwork in Nevada and Montana. I've been an associate planner over at the city of Roseburg, Oregon. So, you know, Roseburg, mid-sized city, technically still a mid-sized city. But similar planning context to some of our rural communities out here. And so I'm really excited to be working with you all. And yeah, just, you're gonna have to be forwarding stuff to a different email now. But Laura's indeed right there. Watch this.
No, it is. Go ahead and tell them that. Tell them about that. That's great.
Yeah, we do actually have a fixed email now. It should just be planner@City of Sheridan. Yeah, see, oh, is it SheridanOrder.com? CitySheridanOrder.com? I gotta get used to that one.
Yeah, or else it'll take you to Wyoming.
Oh, yeah. No, much prefer Montana.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say.
Thank you. So, nice to meet you. And as you know, we all know and love Jim Jackson. So he has access to that. He's wrapping up some of kind of the long-term projects he was on. I transferred all of my active planning files to him. But as he said, I'm still around. And I actually, some of the projects that Jenna just mentioned, I may be assisting you with. So, because I do have grant writing and administration experience. That is something that I do for Sheridan now. I administer your two CDBG grants that you have. And Heidi was gonna come on, and did you have something more you wanted to add, or? Okay, then, Chair, thank
I'm
you.
really to have all the help. So, yes, that's very gonna be awesome. We're gonna really get a lot done. And so this next coming year or two is gonna be just a really great years coming in. So I'm excited. Thank you.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed working in Sheridan, and I look forward to continuing to do that. So you have a really good team here. So, all right, Chair. Okay.
So, next is our public hearing regarding the City of Sheridan amending the Sheridan Development Code, Section 16.203.120, farm uses and livestock. Case number LA 2024-01. I have a script. Good evening. My name is Paula Necas. I am the chair of the Sheridan Planning Commission, and I will be presiding over this public hearing. This is the time and place set for the continued public hearing in the matter of file number LA-24-01, a legislative amendment initiated by the City of Sheridan proposing changes to section 16.203.120, farm uses and livestock of the Sheridan Development Code. These amendments would allow for beekeeping within the city limits and would establish requirements for beekeeping within the City of Sheridan, which shall address issues which might otherwise be associated with beekeeping for domestic purposes in populated areas. The hearing is now open. It is 7:11 p.m. The public hearing will proceed first with the staff report. After a summary of the proposed amendments and applicable criteria is presented, interested parties are given an opportunity to testify. Any party testifying before the commission Commission they must give their name and address for the record. An issue which may be the basis for an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals shall be raised not later than the final public hearing on this case. Such issues shall be raised with and accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford this body and the parties to this hearing an adequate opportunity to respond to each issue. At the close of the public hearing, the Planning Commission will deliberate and pass a motion making a recommendation to the City Council. The City Council will conduct a second public hearing on the proposed amendments. At the conclusion of the City Council public hearing, the City Council may either approve with revisions, deny, or take no action on the proposed amendments. If amendments are approved, the City Council will adopt an ordinance that provides an effective date for the amendments. Before we begin with the staff report, I must ask a few questions. For the audience, are there any objections to the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission to hear this matter? For the Planning Commission, are there any declarations of conflict of interest or bias by any planning commissioner? For the audience, are there any challenges as to conflicts of interest, ex parte contacts, or bias related to any member of the commission, council? City Planner Laura Conroy, please give the staff report.
Well, good evening. I wanted to reiterate, you might be wondering, didn't we do this in January? You did this in January, yes. You did. You had not conducted a hearing, however, and so although you included recommendations and amendments to the language, we needed to back up and go ahead and notice this as a hearing and have you hold the hearing. So that procedurally is why this is in front of you again tonight. Tonight, after you close your hearing and make your recommendation, it would go to the City Council, and that's what it's referring to in here as the final hearing, if you will. You are required by your code and by law to provide the appropriate notice, have a hearing and whatnot. So that's why we're here again. So I won't, because we have presented the staff report once before, I won't take the commission's time and reiterate, except to talk about a few changes that you had. So one of the changes you had was that we used the word beehive throughout, and so that change was made. Another change that I will invite you to discuss tonight is your density requirements. So the language that came to the planning staff was seemed to be a mix of two concepts. One, that you wanted to limit the number of hives per lot, and the other that you wanted to have a minimum lot size. Somehow in your motion, those two got squished together, and because I wasn't here, I wasn't sure which you were trying to accomplish. So the language that's in the staff report and in the amendment says something like up to 3 hives for 5,000 square feet. This evening, after I'm done with my presentation and you close your hearing and are discussing, it would be helpful to have direction about what you wanted that to say. Those were the changes that were made after your January meeting. As I say, because I've already presented the staff report once before, and you have it in front of you and it's in the record, I won't take my time to go through that at this time, unless you would like me to.
I think we've covered it pretty much. So, okay, are there any questions of staff from the commission before we continue and accept public testimony? Okay. I will now accept public testimony regarding the proposed legislative amendments. If you intend to present oral testimony, please fill out the speaker request sheet. Please also clearly state your name and address when you are called to speak. This will help with preparing accurate written minutes for the hearing. If you have written testimony or other evidence to submit, please also give that to staff so it can be entered into the record. Okay, so do we have any public testimony, or is Mike?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Mike.
address is 4194 12th Street Cutoff, Southeast in Salem, 97302. I just want to reiterate and clarify what Laura had to say about item F of section 3. As it's presently written, it is not made clear that the minimum lot size for up to 3 hives, you need to add 2 words, up to, between 4 and 3. Minimum lot size for up to 3 hives is 5,000 square feet. Now, if you want to set other limits in terms of the total number of hives, that could be up to and no more than 3 hives for for at least 5,000 square feet. That way, nobody can have any more than 3 hives, no matter how many lots you have. But you have to have at least 5,000 square feet for 3 hives. I think that's what you intended back in January when you were discussing that. Because even though, as a position, the state, Oregon State Beekeepers does not believe that those restrictions are necessary. Nonetheless, you, as many other cities, have adopted limits based upon lot sizes rather than on conditions. But it's the easiest way for many cities to seem to address this problem. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Any other public comments? Would the commission like staff to address any of the public testimony? Should we just address that right now? The public testimony on the 3 hives. I think we meant to say minimum lot size for beehives, 5,000 square feet. I think the intention was to have up to 3 hives, period, no matter the size of the lot. That was it, yeah. Okay. Up to 3 hives, minimum lot size to have bees is 5,000 square feet. Okay, okay. That's what I think we all agree that's what we meant at that time, yes. Okay. If there are no further questions from the commission of either staff or the public testimony is now over. I will close the public hearing at 7:20 p.m. I will now entertain planning commission discussion on the application. I think we've covered this. We've discussed this several times. Do we have any, does anybody want to add anything to the discussion, or shall we move on? If there is no further planning commission discussion, staff recommend that the planning commission pass a motion adopting the staff report and recommending the city council approve the proposed amendments. Is there a motion to?
I'll make a motion to accept these changes.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are done. Thank you to the members of the public who participated in this discussion this evening, and in the discussions in the past. Thank you very much, Amy and Mike, for your patience.
Thank you.
Okay, new business. Oh, that's me. That's proposal from the planning commissioner, Necas, on time change. You know, earlier this year, we were meeting at 6 for a few times. I kind of like that.
Me too.
Would you like to change? I mean, would you be okay with changing the meeting time to 6? Omega, Laura, or Liam, would that be okay with you? Okay, good, okay. Well, okay, so I'm going to move that we accept the time change to 6 PM for the beginning of our planning commission meetings. Do I hear a second?
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, do we have any planning commission comments? Unless, oh, by the way, let's not forget, we start at 6 now. Okay, any planning commission comments? No? Do I hear a move to adjourn?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thanks, everybody. That worked out well.
Recording stopped.
Bye, Heidi.
Is there an eighth grade head this year?
Good night, thanks everyone. Bye.
We're having one in Sheridan.
Maybe a little too detailed for legislative amendment, but
Yeah, somebody will have, there'll be a churches will have. They don't have.
Nice.
Your audience is just the commission.
Yeah, we're gonna have Archer.
Come back.
Is it? Let's see, what day are you doing that?
I'm in that corner. All right, the transport liaison.
Congratulations.
They usually are.
I don't know what this is like this one.
I'm gonna be taking my class via Zoom.
Oh, you are?
Yeah. It's the Twelfth Valley.
Okay.
First,
Oh, they've got it.
they've got it, yeah, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday night next week.
Okay.
So that's what I'll be doing.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that, I mean, I'm
Don't
sure
go
it's
through.
your
They
local
don't
ones too,
always-
I know that River
Yeah.
Riverside
Has a
has
listing,
flying
but they
in,
don't always list.
they do want to.
That was very scary.
Yeah, oh, good, yeah.
But I think it was more like.
Sometimes when I'm like, sometimes I think that like, sometimes working in local government feels like you're
But that was, I'll figure it out.
Like this.
We're not getting it.
Okay.
We're getting good. Handle at a time. Nice job, Paula.
Congratulations.
Yeah, especially when you told me. No, that's great. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed it. Yeah, and then you know, like.
Yes, yes. Well, it's like, and it's certainly like, you're just kind of at home waiting.
You are, that's what I felt like. I've been
Always
waiting
like,
and
waiting
waiting.
there, waiting, right now, go.
I'm not having that.
Right.
But if I go at 6:30 and the meeting goes too long, I won't. Right. And I gotta speak, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, by the way, I wanna
We all.
thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
I was gonna recommend earlier, and I was like, I've been working until 5:30.
Yeah.
Well, oh, you will recommend 5:30?
Yeah. When I first seen it on there.
3 p.m.
I went back to
And you were the one I was worried about. I didn't know how late you were, and I thought, John may not.
I started 5:30 in the morning.
12 hours is long.
Poor things. I just, I'm leaving Flotsam and Jetsam around.
Well, yeah, but now you have an excuse, you know, you're, because once a month, you're sick.
I changed my business profile.
Nice to meet you, Mary.
Oh.
But my wife.
Actually, really, yeah, we're gonna have to do something present this to the council. So, what did you? Yeah, I mean, I know them because I work with them.
Right.
On the projects, but it would be nice to bring them. Yeah, I mean, like that crossing, that crossing they have here, in the middle of Ridge.
Although you sent out a different notice for.
Nice to meet you.
I saw a lot of like what the solutions are there.
Because
And that seems like. Yeah, it's like I'm just curious, like what the.
Okay.
They'll figure it out.
Oh, it's crazy. It doesn't,
Yeah.
we didn't have to do a crazy deal.
Yeah.
Like for DLC's purpose building, so.
Bye, Laura.
Bye.
Yeah.
Have a good evening.
Oh, I know.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I need to print them out.
Yeah.
I need to print them out. Do you mind waiting for like 2 seconds?
I can wait.
Do they need to,
Which
did you order?
I can
but,
I'll be right